Hey guys, today I'm going over a new bill that was proposed in the House of Representatives late on Friday, and it has to do with your rent and mortgage payments. I know what you're thinking, another bill? Another one? Yes, this is another bill. This is different than the one-time $1,200 stimulus check. This is also different from the $2,000 per month stimulus check that is currently being debated in the House of Representatives. This is a whole new animal. And this bill with your rent and mortgage payments is called Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act of 2020. So if you're someone who pays rent, pays mortgage, or really you just live in the US in general, this video is for you, so keep on watching. What's up everybody, Michael here, welcome back to another video. Before we get started, please be sure to like the video down below and leave a comment with your takeaways or thoughts on today's video. It really helps me out a lot. So anyways, let's get started and let's talk about this new bill called the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act of 2020. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down into 3 parts because this bill is 21 pages of a bunch of legal jargon. That's boring. So I'm going to break it down to 3 simple parts. And we're going to go over what it means for the renters, what it means to homeowners, and what it means to landlords. Let's first go over what this new bill would mean for renters and tenants. And let me tell you, they would have it really good. First of all, it would cancel all rent payments. You are not obligated to pay any rent until the end of COVID-19 pandemic. So until the government takes us out of a state emergency for COVID-19, you would not have to pay a penny for rent. You would not be able to receive any fines, or you could not accrue debt. And what that means is that if you're not paying for 6 months, they can't tell you all of a sudden, well, you gotta pay those 6 months of rent. No, that's not how it would work. If you don't pay for 6 months, you don't owe that money at all. You can't accrue debt at all. So this means you would not be liable for repayment of any amount of your rent. In addition to this, another point is that not paying rent cannot negatively affect your credit score. So by not paying for, let's say, 6 months or however long we would be in the crisis, your credit score would not negatively be affected. Moving on, let's look at the homeowner side of this. And with homeowners, it is very similar to the renters and tenants. Homeowners would not have to pay any mortgage payments on their house. Second point is that your house cannot be foreclosed on. Whether you're in the middle of a foreclosure, it doesn't matter. Cannot be foreclosed on. And the third point is that you cannot accrue any additional fees, penalties, or additional interest during the COVID-19 crisis. So you would not increase how much you owe at all. So whatever you owe, it cannot really go up at all if this was to pass. And another point which is very similar to the rent and tenant side of this bill is that if you fail to make a payment, it cannot negatively affect your credit score at all. First of all, they're not requiring payments, so it would make sense that if you fail to make a payment, that your credit score would not negatively be affected. Okay, so now we covered renters and homeowners, and it sounds pretty good to me. Like, if you're a renter, you don't have to pay anything and nothing bad could happen. Same if you're a homeowner, you stop paying mortgage payments, not can negatively affect your credit score, you're all good. But what about landlords? What about the people who own apartment buildings? What about landlords? So anyways, let's go over how this bill will affect landlords. As part of this bill for the landlords, they would create the Housing and Urban Development Fund, which would just be a fund with a bunch of money for landlords. However, it sounds great, but it's not really. They have to satisfy a bunch of requirements and they have to follow them for 5 years. So I'm going to lay out these requirements really quickly. And let me tell you, these requirements, they're pretty rough. They don't look so good for the landlord. So anyways, the requirements are that you cannot increase your rent for 5 years. If you live in an apartment, you know that rent increases every year because of inflation. So imagine not being able to increase your rent at all as a landlord for 5 years. It's just not really practical at all. The second thing is that you can only evict people for just cause, meaning that you can't just evict someone because you don't want them to live there. There has to be a just reason for you to evict them. That one sounds all right. The third point is that you can't collect back any rent. And the fourth point is that you can't contact debt collectors if your tenants are not paying their rent. The next point is that you cannot restrict tenancy based on credit history, arrest records, source of income. Normally that's what people look at. They have to look at, are you gonna have a stable job? Have you been arrested? Those are pretty standard things. And you can't do that if you are part of this agreement and you want the funding. And you may be thinking this is bad. But it gets even worse when you start to talk about how the government is going to decide which landlords are going to receive funding first. And they're going to base this off a tiered system, which looks at your assets, your revenues. So if you're a landlord and own a lot of assets, that means like if you have a lot of properties or if you just are wealthy, this is not going to be good for you because they're going to give the funding to the people who have less assets first. So that means if you're someone who's successful, let's say you've built up a real estate business, you have a couple of properties, not good for you. It's going to be better for the people who have one property maybe and barely generate any revenue. It'll be better for them because they'll get the money first. After reading through this 21-page bill, you start to realize how extreme it really is because the requirements for the landlords are really strict. But for the renters, for the homeowners, it's nothing. You just don't pay your rent, don't pay your mortgage. You don't have to satisfy any requirements. But for landlords, they have to satisfy all these different requirements, agree to terms for 5 years. That's crazy. But if it were to go through, you wouldn't have to pay rent, wouldn't have to pay your mortgage for a year. So, I mean, just wanted to keep you guys updated with what's going on in the House of Representatives. This bill was just proposed on Friday, and it's nowhere close to being passed. But it's something to keep in mind because it is going on in the House of Representatives, and it is important to stay updated with it, even though it is unlikely it'll go through, because if it does, it'll affect almost every single person in the United States. Anyone who pays rent, anyone who has a mortgage, anyone who's a landlord, this would affect. With that being said, make sure to get your 2 free stocks when you sign up for Webull investing app using the link down below, an additional free stock when you sign up for Robinhood. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video down below, leave a comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.